Started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Good to see smiling faces. I think we have Drew Morris online. Drew, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Hang on just a second. We got to turn your volume up. Can you say something again?
Yep, I can hear you guys great. Thank you.
Now we can hear you. All right. Any questions about the update agenda this evening? All right. Questions about the formal meeting tonight? All right. If I could get some help with who's going to read what, who will do the land acknowledgement tonight?
I can do it.
All right, and then we have presentation 7A is recognizing the board and commission members that are stepping down.
I can do that.
All right, we have a quasi judicial hearing. So we have a item 10A for that one is a resolution approving the service plan for the Thornton Commons Metro District and an IGA between the city and the Metro District.
I can do that.
All right, and then we have several action items. 14A is a resolution adopting the environmental sustainability master plan. Okay. And then 14B is amending city code. And then 14C is amending a budget.
I can do it.
Is that you, Devin?
Yeah, I can do that.
And then 14D is the litigation. All right, and then Drew, for the record, you won't be able to participate in the quasi judicial hearing. So you just have to sit there quietly.
I'm tracking. Thank you.
All right, and then remember, we have two other meetings tonight too. So we have a Tashco meeting where we'll get an update, but we also have an amendment to the bylaws.
I can do that.
Okay. And then we have a TDA meeting. And it doesn't look like we have any action items on that one, other than minutes. All right. And then we'll note on the consent agenda that you'll be abstaining from that one portion for Laridan. All right, let's jump up to state legislative briefing.
Okay, so Rob Colson is going to kick us off and to start with a very special introduction.
Very special guest. Before I do that, Peggy is online. Peggy, can you hear us okay?
I sure can, thank you.
Thanks. And her associate Phil is here as well. So before we get started, I would like to introduce or reintroduce for some of you Kevin Forget. He is the assistant to the city manager focused on strategic initiatives started yesterday. So he's read all of the bills that we're following and is ready to answer any question you might have on any current or future legislation.
How was your orientation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin comes to us from DIA. Was working in intergovernmental affairs. Before that was at the city and county of Denver in the mayor's office. Between the two, had a stint with CJ Lake, who is our federal lobbyist. And before going to Denver, he started his local, well, I shouldn't say start, but got his best experience in local government, where all good careers started in the city of Thornton. So Kevin was a city employee a number of years back when you know him. So we're very, very happy to have Kevin back. He is a wealth of knowledge and experience in area of legislation and intergovernmental, and we're really excited for his contributions in the other focus areas of this position: strategic planning, organizational development, customer service. So I'm really, really happy to have Kevin with us tonight. And with that, anything you want to say to the council?
Nope, just so excited to be back. Look forward to working with you all.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
And we do know that you have a full agenda tonight at the update, and we do have some bills that we want to talk with you about, give you an update. So I'm going to really quickly turn it over to Peggy to highlight these are the bills that you've weighed in on thus far, and give Peggy an opportunity to comment on any of these bills from a process standpoint you want to highlight, Peggy, that would be of note to council.
Yeah, you bet. We talked about a few of them last week that have met their demise. So we'll leave those alone. But just a quick update, 1114, which is the minimum lot size legislation that was introduced in the Senate, hasn't been calendared yet. So we'll keep you posted on that one. House Bill 1030 has a fiscal note on it. So that one will probably be in a tough spot, but I don't see that on our list. So never mind, ignore that. Sorry. 1001 was signed by the governor. 1005 labor legislation, that was the Labor Peace Act. That was heard in Senate Business Affairs, past party line, sitting in appropriations. Still expect the governor to veto that one. But it will have a hearing in appropriations probably next week. So we'll keep you posted on that one. And then happy to surveillance. Senate Bill 70 is still sitting in appropriations, 71 still sitting in its committee of origin, and 1037. That one is still sitting in its first committee as well. So we'll keep you posted on those as they move through the process.
Any questions on these bills before we move on to the new ones? Peggy, did you want to cover each of these quickly?
You bet. I will be zippy on these. 1308 is lot splitting. This is past the House, and it allows municipalities to approve a lot split of an original lot into two lots, as long as they meet requirements that specify the size, accessibility, utility access, and whether a lot is exempt or not. It was amended to specify the criteria that will be used by municipalities in lot splitting proposals, and sets rules for when municipalities can apply for a setback. The bill passed the House last week and was introduced in the Senate, assigned to local government committee, and is currently not calendared yet. It is being met, as you can imagine, by concerned local government entities. It is supported by organizations like the Home Builders. Interestingly enough, Conservation Colorado is supporting it. And the Home Builders I mentioned, Natural Resources Defense Council as well, and Southwest Energy Efficiency. So that bill will continue through the Senate shortly.
So staff reviewed that. Obviously, there was home rule concerns about this bill. The administrative process and overruling our minimum lot size. It would require us to modify the development code. The bill is silent on public engagement, so I presume that means you could have some sort of public engagement process. But again, if you don't have the criteria to really evaluate it, if it's pretty much a ministerial or an administrative approval, I'm not really sure how the benefit of public engagement when it's not really in the public's realm to comment on. So I wanted to pause there and see if you wanted to take a position on that one.
And we have this authority already. This is forcing us to do it instead of allowing us our own authority.
Yeah, basically it says that this has to be an administrative process and then go as low as 1,200 square feet.
I think from the home rule, we have to stay with oppose.
I would concur with this. I would advocate for an amend position just because I think we'd have a better chance at getting amendments on this.
What do you think we could amend?
Well, I think some of the policies. No.
Because it'd be great to have a position to ask for the amendments.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. Dave and then Chris.
Favor or opposed?
Chris,
If we were gonna amend, I would say that minimum lot size is 1,200. It's a little tight, probably for some properties in Thornton. So maybe bump that up What did we settle on? Was it 21 for our smallest, I believe?
I do not know.
So granted, it's not gonna be, probably, it's gonna be more of like an ADU structure, but I would think 15 to 1,800, and those that have large lots, they want to put a second home that's available, but with 1,200, you might see some very tight lots in Thornton, and that to me is a little concerning.
What I worry about is if we, and sorry, I'll get to you next, Devin, is that if we don't oppose, we lose that authority for a home rule. And we have the ability to go small as we want. We can split lot sizes and we're missing the community input piece of it, which is what we've been against this time.
Yeah, but to Justin's point, I think with the support that it has, if we can amend it, we can get some of the things maybe that we do or wouldn't want to see in there. Otherwise, it's gonna go through as is. So it's kind of a meet in the middle if you can change it some. Otherwise, if I'm not mistaken, it does have a lot of support, correct?
Well, he listed a couple of them already.
Yeah, home builders, but I mean, conservation.
Well, we're always going to support.
They're all,
right?
yeah, they're a given. So I'm trying to think, a little more creatively in terms of if there's some things that we want in there, maybe an amendment's probably doable. But I see it having so much support that if we do nothing, or if we just do an oppose, it still goes through. So open to any other suggestions, but lot size was the first thing that popped off to me.
Kevin, and then I'm Justin again.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what the minimum lot sizes we currently have in places already, because if you look at something like the Villa East Lakes, those lot sizes are pretty small. And based on the housing meeting we had in our last planning session, that was kind of some of the things we told them to kind of push towards and kind of build off of. I don't think that we're losing anything by doing the oppose on it, just because of the home rule aspect of it and saying that, hey, look, we're already building houses on small lots and we're already trying to push that to what limits we believe as a city is the best idea, rather than listening to what we have to abide by from the law that's gonna take over that home.
Tans, you want to interject?
I was just pulling up really quickly without pulling stuff here and a full report. I mean, lot size kind of depends on the use and the zoning district. So I just pulled up one table for a point of reference. So, because I think this ultimately would bring down that threshold kind of across the board. So this is the residential low density. In the case of a 1-unit detached, it's 3,500. A dwelling with 2 units attached or a duplex is 2,000. So that might have been a 2,000 reference that somebody made. It depends on if there's alley access or front access. So it gets a little bit more complicated than there's not one single answer to the question.
Okay. Justin?
Yeah, just my reaction was to amend versus oppose, because all these bills are passing. And we've opposed, and it doesn't mean anything to oppose. So it feels like our voice is just, okay, we're opposed, but they're gonna pass it anyway. We're not having much traction with this conversation. So I've been thinking about maybe just blanket opposition. Well, if they're gonna do it anyway, we might as well be able to have a better voice at the table to maybe get some more. But the trend is that the legislators are gonna pass these bills anyway. Every single one of them has passed so far. So.
Does anyone have a relationship with the sponsors?
Conservation call.
No, not the supporters. It's Andrew Bosnecker, Stephen Woodrow, Judy Amabile, and Matt Ball. Because my thought is we could oppose on paper, take the position opposed, but reach out and have those conversations that we could move to amend if they could meet with us. Nobody knows them. I don't know them either.
Well, that's part of the reason why we have a lobbyist too.
That's true.
I think, if you all want to take an amend or an opposed position with some clarity of what we would like to see changed, either way, I think we can communicate those through Peggy to to the bill sponsors. And what we would want to do obviously is get your clear direction on position, amend or oppose. And then what we could do is come back and say, hey, here's some prime amendments that we would like to see, share that with you all and communicate that with the legislators, regardless of what position you end up formally taking.
And maybe that's an opportunity that we oppose because of the home rule, but have Peggy reach out to see where might be willing to work with us that we could move to amend.
I'm for that.
Is that okay?
I still think we should take an amend position too.
All right, so I got 2 say amend, 3 say amend, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Drew, we didn't hear what you had to say.
I'm like to take an opposed position. I mean, this is just a fundamental, doesn't matter whether we like what's in the bill or not. This is all about home rule authority, and we have to take an opposed position to just make sure we're upholding that end.
There's consensus to oppose, and I think I have agreement to say we should at least reach out and see what they'd be willing to talk about
Well,
on lot sizes.
I would say amend so we can see what we can do, but if we don't have, if we don't have consensus, it doesn't matter, but I feel that just having more of a conversation on is important, because I think we're just continuously doing this with these bills where we're
What if we took
cities against.
But I think we'd have to be super clear on what we want to amend. And so maybe that's where we, instead of taking a position at all, ask Peggy to reach out and see what they're willing to talk to us
Yeah.
about.
That would probably be better.
Yeah.
I would
Non
rather,
position or just?
Or just no position, reach out. If we can't get anyone to talk to us, we move to oppose.
Yeah, let them know that oppose is on the table for us, but we'd like. to
We
see
want
some
partnership
amendments.
over preemption.
Right, yeah, we want some events in there and how to respond to that, maybe the course we take.
Roberta?
yeah, I feel like what's frustrating with it is that like, we're not a city that's just trying to. We have other cities in the state that are just being ridiculous with this stuff. We're not being ridiculous, but it's like, it's almost
Same
like you have to
consequence.
go our way or the highway on everything, and that's really frustrating, so. Yeah, if somebody could have a conversation and get some sort of movement on it, that would be great.
So no
Mayor?
position- Oh, please, Peggy, go ahead.
Yeah, you bet. I can certainly, this is one of the bills that is coming from the governor's office, so I think they're driving a lot of the discussions. I can certainly talk with both the governor's office and the bill sponsors if we have some specific ideas of what we want to amend. I heard discussion around lot size. So that sounds like something that I can certainly, if we've got a suggestion on what we would change, and I can work with staff to get some of those specifics, and talk with both the gov's office and bill sponsors if that works.
I think that's the easiest one for us now. If there's others that staff would think might be also beneficial to amend.
Setback requirements were another thing we flagged, so we can work together to get some language up and have those initial conversations, bring it back at the next update.
Perfect.
That work?
Thank you.
Okay. Next one, Peggy.
Next one is 1329, motor vehicle stunt drive and takeover penalties. This bill was introduced, bipartisan bill to try to address street racing. It criminalizes street racing, drag racing, stunt driving on public highways and roadways. It establishes penalties ranging from misdemeanors to felonies, depending on the offense and prior convictions. The bill was assigned to the Judiciary Committee and does not have support amongst the Democrats because of those increased penalties. It only has one Democrat right now that's supporting it, the bill sponsor. So I don't believe this is coming out of committee. We were going to encourage you to take a position on it, but just want to give you that information. The bill sponsor doesn't think this is going to come out of committee, so take that into account as well.
Justin?
What are these penalties that, like, how steep are they, like, what's? I wanna support this, but.
Yeah.
I hate street racing.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest complaints we
A lot of
get.
street racing. But like, are these penalties like absurd, or what's the objection?
I might ask Chief Reeves to come up. My understanding is it escalates the penalties from a class 1 misdemeanor to a class 5 felony. I don't, from a practical standpoint, I don't know how obscene or steep those are. I guess it depends on if you're getting.
Yeah, so it depends upon the conviction, and obviously it starts with first offense, which is on the minors, but then after a conviction, then it does raise the level. Some of the things in the bill, which I think the only thing where CACP is looking at, and they're looking at it as a, to get it an addendum to it, would be there is a penalty for spectators, and so they're not in agreement of that. Otherwise, it covers the coordinators, any organizers, or anybody participating in any type of street takeover, exhibition of speed, street race, or blocking of that of highways. This thing would fall into enforcement under.
Since it won't leave committee, should we hold off on this one until we hear a little bit more, just so we're not spending a lot of time debating something that probably won't go anywhere?
Yeah.
Okay, one follow-up question. Do we have our own ordinances against street racing?
We don't have a street racing per se, but we do write them under careless, either careless, reckless. We do have an exhibition of speed, which is under a state. So if they are racing, there is an exhibition of speed. As far as into a municipal court, no, we write it underneath the state. But we do have it. Some of these things, what the bill also allows us to do is immediately tow vehicles. You could go for seizure of the vehicles itself. Plus, it also places, when you start looking at misdemeanors, you can actually then physically take custody of them and bring them in, whereas traffic infractions, you can't be taking people physically into custody.
Okay. Sounds like a pretty good bill.
It does. I have Roberta then Chris. Roberta then Chris.
I'm good.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I would say that in light of not carrying too long of a discussion on it, I don't love the felony piece because they are typically younger people, and that felony might stick with them for their lifetime for being just dumb and young. However, last week was the big Texas street racing thing. I forget what it's called. And it's broad swath, not to compare Texas to Colorado because a lot of things are different, but they do have similar where spectators are can be ticketed and fined, as well as the immediate confiscation of the vehicle. So I think there needs to be something more in the middle, but I don't love the felony piece. Take their car away, you start reducing the crowds by citing those individuals. Maybe we can have a meaningful impact. So I would say amend to, if we were going to take something, but I think it's going to die.
Hold off.
Mentioned.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I would like to see changed, but I agree, harsher penalties are needed because Highway 7 is a drag strip behind my house
All right, hold for now.
in Colorado.
Well, if it does make it out of committee, I think the expectation is bring it back and talk about potentially some amendments, if I understand the discussion. Okay, thanks, that's helpful.
And
Good
I'm
job, Peggy.
happy to let sponsors know that as well. We'd love to work on it during the interim and maybe find language that's more acceptable to those that are opposing it right now.
That's a good idea.
The next one we have is House Bill 1010. This we added to the list to address, we increased our priorities this year for seniors and older adults. So we wanted to make sure we added this to our list of bills to reviews. This bill increases support for workers age 60 and older by requiring state workforce entities to collaborate on data collection, mandating annual reports to the General Assembly, and ensuring representation of older adults on key workforce-related boards and councils. It's supported by Disability Law, Bell Policy, Pikes Peak Area of Council of Governments, Colorado Center for Law and Policy, the Women's Chamber. So a variety of organizations are supporting it and just wanted to bring it to your attention tonight.
I don't think anyone's opposed, but I don't think it's like a huge, we have to do anything with it.
Yeah, it doesn't have a direct impact on the city. We recognize, as Peggy said, that you added this as a priority to your platform, and so we wanted to make sure that there've been a few that have come down the lines. This one we would just want to highlight in case you wanted to take a position.
Yeah, Roberta then Justin.
Why does it keep saying?
I don't know. Justin.
Okay, I'm okay with a support position. If that seems a little like stretch, I guess, then an alternative would recommend is just kind of maybe consensus to have be supported at the Dr. Cog level because it is part of the Dr. Cog and Blay thing. So I'm okay with either.
That sounds like a good
Yeah.
approach.
And I'm sure, I would bet that Dr. Cog supports it, but if if we have consensus, I'll definitely vote in favor of that when we do take position on it.
Any
I support
objection?
Justin as well.
Any objection to that? Thank you.
Senate Bill 150, Peggy?
Yes, this is a new bill that came out yesterday. Reforms the RTD by reducing the board from 15 elected members to 9. 5 elected, 4 appointed by the governor, requires a comprehensive paratransit analysis and implementing population-based redistricting. Brand new bill, so we just got it on your list today, but definitely wanted to flag it as we've watched these bills in the past.
Yeah, we actually talked about this before it was actually a bill about how we were not in support because it appoints people, but I have Justin and then John.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think at the very least amend. I really. Actually, before I get into that, I have a question because Peggy, you mentioned that it was 4 appointed seats by the governor, but I understood that 2 were appointed by the governor directly and 2 would be appointed by the Dr. Cog board. Am I right, or is that something that I just misheard?
Let me go back through and look at that.
I had 9, 5 being elected, 4 appointed by the governor, 2 of which will be from a list of from Dr. Cog,
Okay,
and 2 from the
Yep.
governor's discretion. We got it yesterday, but I think that's
so
I think
it would
that's
still be an
breakdown.
official appointment by the governor, but Dr. Cog board would recommend.
That's kind of my understanding. These provide a short list, I think, Peggy, and we can clarify that.
I think that's exactly right as I look at it.
That's how it was presented to the Metro mayors too.
Well, in that case, my personal position would be amend, it's specifically asking to amend that appointee, the governor's appointee to,
Keep them elected.
to keep him elected. Like, if we want to reduce the size of the board, that makes sense. And actually, after hearing many presentations from the RTD Accountability Board, which is the source of this bill, I do think that there are things that the bill addresses that are good, that could help out RTD, but I cannot get on board with so much power to appoint through the governor. It's just too
Agreed.
much.
And it doesn't matter who the governor is.
It doesn't matter anything. It's just a lot, a point.
So Peggy, is this from the governor's office too as well?
It's the accountability committee that was put together.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, I agree with
Which came
Justin.
from the
We
governor.
can't, I mean, yeah, there's some things that, we need to do with RTD, but eliminating elected positions isn't one of them. So I think, what Justin proposes, I think that would be good. So I would agree with the amendment position. Because we don't need 4 appointees, like I said, regardless of who the governor is, where it's Governor Polis or whoever wins in November, doesn't matter. That's too much power for one person. So we need to have some sort of balance. So that's all I have.
So we're thinking amend with removing the appointee and making them elected.
Okay, you?
And your button's just on forever, Roberta, so if you want to talk, just let us know.
Oh,
That's the minute to turn off.
Just interject whenever.
It won't turn off.
Last one, Peggy, 1318.
Yes, 1318. This is the bill that redefines school zones to include all roadways within at least 1,000 feet of school property boundaries, establishes a new provision for school streets with reduced speed limits and enhanced pedestrian protections. It is opposed by the Colorado school executives and supported by White Line and Bicycle Colorado.
And I'll just say, our preference, we have some technical questions and concerns about this. It's been kind of weird because there hasn't been that much action on this since it was introduced. We wanted to bring it to your attention because obviously we're all about increasing traffic safety for people near schools. We'd like a little bit of time to try to get an understanding of the intent behind the legislation and make sure our interpretation is correct and maybe not contrary to maybe the intent of the legislation. But we did want to bring this one up because it's been kind of sitting out there that we've been talking about and want to make sure you're aware that we're tracking that.
Devin?
Well, being that my wife works in a school, and I have a 6-year-old, this one hits pretty close to me. But then I also have a friend whose son was actually hit by a car and put in critical condition, near a school that the main road was considered a school lane, but the one that he was walking across right next to the school was not. So, personally, I think that this is something we should be supporting. And I think that it kind of just ties into the fact that people need to slow down around schools.
So should we look into the technical piece before we take an official position?
Yeah, our primary concern was that the 1,000-foot distance was, might bring roads that are not really applicable to any sort of school route, but understanding your perspective of, yeah, we want to make sure that we have max protection for kids on their routes. And so, and we don't want to take a position of opposition to a traffic safety, near schools bill, we assume. And so we just wanted to make you aware of it, that we see some things that we like and would really like a little bit more time to get some clarity on the technical details, if that's all right with y'all.
Chris?
Would you also find out then if they're open to maybe stair stepping some of those requirements based on the road, where if it's an arterial road or like Washington? Obviously, maybe we don't have it there, but the neighborhood roads, to your point, because my little girl, you've experienced that as well too. So I have no problem with neighborhood roads and things, but if that 1,000 feet gets into some major roadways that
doesn't
maybe
actually impact the school.
Exactly, it's what Rob's point is. So maybe there's some tiers based on the size of the roadway that we can do in terms of application.
All right.
Okay. That's our list for tonight. Are there any other bills that you wanted to talk about that Kevin can bring next time?
Just like old times. All right.
Thanks very much.
That looks like some code compliance updates.
Yeah, so both the Mike Show, Mike Garrett and Mike Hinkinson are joining us. This is a follow-up actually to a request from Councilor Martinez. We're gonna broadly just speak to our code enforcement philosophy, staffing, but there was a specific request to benchmark against other cities to understand how our approaches and resourcing compares to other places. So want to both appreciate the work that they've done to pull this together, and also recognize some members of the budget office team also helped with some of the benchmarking and comparison. I'll give the floor to Mike.
All right, well, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Mike Garrett, Planning Director, and with me is Mike Hinkinson, the Code Compliance Manager. Go through this relatively quick, but if you have questions along the way, please ask. So this is to provide an update, kind of the end of the year update for code compliance on laws and fines that were enacted the last couple of years. So we have first full year of good data on that kind of information since we've incorporated. So we're going to go through that. We're going to talk real briefly through the code compliance philosophy, which aligns very closely to other enforcement action activity the city does. The penalty process, parking citations that we've really picked up on last year, shopping cart retrieval program, which has been full year in the process, and then the comparisons that Tansy mentioned a few minutes ago. From there, it's going through our philosophy, which the slide may be familiar because it's something that was presented at retreat a while back, but it's basically aligns with police, general enforcement that the city does. We always try to be customer service friendly. We always try education before enforcement and fines along those lines. That's an ongoing philosophy that we continue to hold closely as we work with the public. From there, I'm going to hand it over to Mike Hinkinson to go through the year in review, shall we say.
Well, good evening. So you see, basically the nuisance codes and the zoning codes that we typically enforce. We are more nuisance heavy, focusing on the weeds, especially the vehicles, which you'll see in a couple of slides. Junk and litter, obviously the shopping carts is in the nuisance code, and then obstruction to the streets or sidewalk that we can remedy in short And the zoning violations range, I mean, extremely wide range of things we can enforce on that. And with the update, it's a lot more difficult, but there's a lot more to enforce as well. As far as land use codes, what people can and can't do with their properties, can and can't build on their property that isn't pertaining to a building violation. The landscaping is a big one as well, and fence maintenance, especially along arterial streets and entryways to the city. Typical compliance process is 7 to 10 days for initial notice of violation. From there, if they don't request an extension or communicate with the officer, then we move forward to issue the citation along with a notice to show cause, issuing the fines as well as scheduling a court date. And at that court date, if they choose to show up, they can contest the violation, whether it was or was not, or request an extension from the judge. However, if they don't show up, and I'd say maybe 2% of people actually do show up to these, we get the court order, fines are initiated, and they have anywhere from 5 days to 30 days to comply based on the violation. If they have reached out to us, we will extend it. However, we try to make them come to court and ask the judge for more time. The associate judges are not typically extending or waiving fines unless there's extenuating circumstances, which we're trying to make sure that they don't, and hold these people accountable for being in violation, as well as the constant repeat offenders. The adopted penalties that were in 2024 for the first violation is $150. Second violation within 12 months is $500, and then $1,000 for a third violation within a 12-month period. And if they're not paid within 15 days, late fees apply, as well as then it can be either a lien or collections. Right now, we've just gone to lien. We haven't used the collection agency for any of these. But as Mike did state, we do try to work with people as much as possible. We get things cost money to do, so we try to work with them until we just exhaust all of our efforts, or even go through community connections if at all possible. So going back to the violations, the chart on the right just shows year to year. The blue is service requests, which is a complaint by the resident. And then the orange is proactive cases. And then on the left, you see vehicles is the top violation throughout the city, along then followed with weeds and brush, and then on down the list. And this does vary sometimes by year. This year, obviously, landscaping and weed violations might be lower if we're in a drought season. And landscaping violations will probably be a lot lower to work with people on installing something versus just having dirt, if at all possible, unless we get some rain. This is just the heat map of where most of the violations occur in the city. Obviously, it's in the south end where there is no HOAs, higher density housing. It has grown significantly north as the city ages. HOAs disband, and just general violations are on the increase there. So the civil penalties issued significant. In 2024, we probably did about 4 months of issuing these fines. A total of 161 at 27,000 fines issued, with 17,000 being waived. And in 2025, total of 160 civil violations with 43,000. And the increase of that is the level of fine being issued, going from not just the tier 1 of 150, but moving up to 500 and to the $1,000 level. Parking citations have increased significantly. 2024, see 146 vehicles impounded and issued $19,000 in fines. And then 2025, and 2025 was the whole year versus 2024. 270 parking violations at 37,000 in fines and 267 vehicles impounded. And I foresee that to continue this year. The abandoned shopping cart program, I hope, is successful. I know there's been a lot that have been removed, and the complaints have gone down. But all of last year, 878 carts were removed and returned to vendors if they could tell what vendor it belonged to. And the top 3, King's, Safeway, and Walmart, which is to be expected. Those are the top 3 retailers in the city. And then our abatement actions for people that individuals that fail to comply or businesses that fail to comply. Weeds, junk, and the majority of the last 2 years have been homeless encampments. And we recently just took, parks will be taking over all parks and city property for homeless encampments, and then we'll just be dealing with private property. So we'll have more time and be able to get those cleaned up as well. You want this one? This, so we have a total of 8 officers. 1 is dedicated to graffiti removal throughout the entire city. That leaves 7 officers that are assigned areas and districts of the city that they are to canvass and patrol on a daily basis. The 3-year average of cases is 9,500, and the officer per officer is 1,100 cases per year. And we have private property, the homeless encampment, which is transferring to parks, but we do all on commercial and commercial properties and vacant properties throughout the city. And, the case manager, we have track everything through cases, and we're trying to implement some better ways for residents to go in and see what cases they have either complained about, or they just want to see what's going on with the property. They can be able to look that up. So if we get that go up and going. Ticketing, e-ticket writers, we're working on that and getting a contract in place to streamline that process directly from the field to the courts. And so hopefully that'll streamline everything and better tracking for courts and not the paperwork that gets lost. The 2026 abatement budget is split for $545,000, with $300,000 of that moving to parks just for the homeless encampments on parks and city property. The code dashboard we brought up before. This is a link, and you should all have it available. If not, feel free to email me and I'll get it over to you. But this basically gives you anything code related cases, and you can zoom in, zoom out on the map and search dates, search violations, whatever you'd like to do, and get information or these case numbers, and find something you want to have more questions about. You can always email and get those answered.
All right, so we'll go into some comparison data that was a request of council. Thank the budget office with helping us as well, because you'll see that we did survey 10 additional communities besides Thornton, of course. The first slide you're seeing here is a 3-year average. What we do is we order it by population. In this category, Fort Collins is the largest city. They become important because when it looks at comparisons, they're the closest to us when how we do our customer service and enforcement. Fort Collins is much up here on that. Often others don't do enforcement the same way, and I'll go over that here in just a few moments. But you'll see that caseload, each community has various caseloads. Thornton had the most at over 9,500 cases. The averages of all communities, including Thornton, was about half of what Thornton does, a caseload of cases. And why that happens is often in most of these communities do reactive enforcement. That means complaint-based. They may pick up another home or two while they're out in the same area, but they don't actively patrol in most cases. So you do see a significant lower number, especially we use unincorporated Adams County, the unincorporated population of that. You'll see that number is 255 because they basically are just enforcement based on a call complaint basis. They don't go looking for other violations. They would have a much higher number, much like these other communities. Fort Collins, Lakewood, and Thornton do more proactive enforcement than they are reactive. That's why those numbers are so high generally. The average caseload is about 800 cases per community. You see our numbers about 500 cases above that. So we actively enforce about 80% of our cases and 20% are enforcement. That goes back to the slide Mike showed earlier that had that the bar charts where you saw the orange line being significantly higher than the blue line on those drawings. So operational aspects, I did mention that when they look at how they break down the number of enforcement officers, some communities will do it by wards or areas. We're an area based, we're not ward based on we having 7 areas in the communities and 4 wards. Municipality average, excluding Thornton, was almost 1/3 of our caseload. So if we took Thornton out of that chart I just showed, is about 3,800 cases annually for those other 10 communities. All municipalities focus on private properties. We, in the past, like Mike mentioned, code did help with the encampments on parkland and other open space areas that shifted to parks this year. So we're primarily focused on private properties. We're also focused on those vehicles too. As you saw, that number is very high, so unlicensed and operable vehicles in the street and on private properties. Our compliance rate, average of the communities are around 94%. Thornton's a little lower at 92%, and we are seeing that number increase as we started the citation. So our number were in the 80s before we started civil citations. So we are starting to get people to comply a little quicker now with even a threat of a fine, that people are having a tendency to comply versus having to pay fines. Technology, when we did survey the other communities, most communities have a tracking system for their cases. The public facing part is evolving in a lot of communities where people can, some cases they require login information to actually look at cases. They can still, and I should say, they can look and create new cases for a community. They can give an address where it's. A lot of communities will allow you to do that anonymously. You may still have a login, but they won't know where that came from. So that's unique from that perspective. Very much a time saver when individuals want to know what's going on in a case they've made a complaint about. They can track that themselves. They don't have to call a community to get that information. So 24 hours a day, 365, they can do that. That's something we're looking into to see if we can get that kind of available information, both for making concerns to the city and be able to track cases. Ticketing, technology wise, we're moving this way as well as having electronic ticketing. Right now, we still have a paper ticket that we issue. We are real close to having electronic ticketing coming on board, so that'll be coming up soon. And then body cameras, out of the 11, including us, about half use body cameras now. The other half are basically looking into it. It's just a lot of upfront costs. A lot of communities are looking at, but they are taking that seriously as well. So takeaway, we're very similar, most jurisdictions, on how we do enforcement, especially the code's no longer doing the homeless encampments on public lands. I mentioned before, 80% compliance is what we look, 84 proactive case, 80% proactive case, I'll get there. What I mentioned before is why we don't have solid numbers on the communities, their percentages, is because most communities have a goal on how much the citizens complain versus proactive enforcement. I'll be honest, when I talk to individuals, they said we have a goal of 50-50, but all honesty, based on our staffing, and we're probably 80% called by citizens and 20% picked up by staff. So all over the place, everybody strives to be proactive, but it is a tough hurdle in a lot of communities. Almost every community I surveyed had some type of staffing related issue in their code enforcement. And that's unfortunately kind of typical in that realm, that you'll see turnover quite frequently in that area. The only one that was close to us is Fort Collins. They're 80% like we were. They had a similar caseload as we did. So looking to the future, we talked about the SPOR. We'll continuously have to evaluate our proactive, reactive responses, especially as the city continues to grow and have additional areas of concerns. Can we continue to maintain that level of service? Technology, I mentioned this before, I won't go really into it again, but that'll be a kind of a key as we evolve in how we do code enforcement in the future. Technology will be something we'll be looking seriously into how we evolve our processes. And that leads us to questions.
Justin?
When was the last time that we added new staff to expanded the code enforcement staff?
So last year's 24 budget.
So that last year. This year, what do you anticipate changes in terms of, do you anticipate expanding the staff, requesting more funds for technology? What do you anticipate, or you're still trying to figure that out?
So one thing that we are funded for this year is for our e-ticket for technology aspects, for sure. We do have some work in our online system this year to have some funds for that as well. Work to that. When it comes to additional staffing, we did not request the 26 budget additional staffing and code this year. So that'd be something in the future if that was something to look at for the 27 budget and beyond that, but I can't say we'd be looking at that right now.
Does the e-ticketing system allow, tell me a little bit more about how that people who reach out to you to notify you about a potential violation? Is there constant contact with them in terms of following up on the status of their call? The reason I ask is because several times in the past, I've worked with residents who have reported violations, potential violations, but then they struggled because they didn't know what to expect in terms of follow-up. And so my question is about what the capabilities of our systems are and technology.
Well, right now, when they email or however it comes in, they'll usually receive a response within 24 hours that it was received. This says, it's been assigned, here's the person to contact, and here's their, whether email or direct phone number. And then usually at least the first round, the officer will say, I inspected, and this is the process, and that'll be the end of it. Because just due to the fact that it does take a lot more time to have to update every single time we go out. And sometimes it's just a matter of we go out and not find a violation, didn't find it, and then, or it comes back at night or what have you. They get the update at least 24 to 40 hours after the inspection was done, letting them know what occurred and what the process moving forward is. But they are provided with contact information if they want to use that to respond and ask those questions. However, so there's several that like to be anonymous and then just demand updates on a regular basis. And those just are going to take a little longer to get to.
Okay.
I have a quick question. So we moved $300,000 to the parks budget in order to deal with encampments. Did we add an FTE to manage those encampments, or is it still?
We did not, and so we will be evaluating. This is the first year that Parks has taken that. There was a lot of collaboration between City Attorney's Office, Code Enforcement, and Parks to create a system to sort of monitor and manage that. I do think that's one of those things we'll have to evaluate looking back to see whether or not they were able to absorb the workload. One of the advantages of having Parks step into that role is they have a much larger staff, and so there was some ability to distribute some of that role. We did give them some additional contract resources.
We didn't take a member of code away and move them.
No, we did not. No, we did give some additional contractual resources kind of to hopefully backfill some of the spaces, the time that their full-time staff was using to manage the program. But I do think that's one of those things we'll have to reevaluate going forward.
Other questions? Very much appreciate all of the work that your department is doing. You are the unsung heroes. The ones people hate to see coming, but except for the neighbors that love to see you dealing with the problems. So thank you.
Thank you.
Your next item is very, very quick. So on your consent agenda tonight, you do have a new agreement for fiber. We know that many of you are seeing fiber activity in your neighborhoods and getting questions about that. And so this is frankly just a little bit of a refresher and check-in, knowing that it's been a little bit of a point of interest probably with your constituents before you're asked to approve another agreement tonight.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'm Marta Junien. I'm the Senior Civil Engineer in Traffic, and I'll be talking about fiber right-of-way use agreements. The purpose of the update is to give a very quick overview of this type of agreements, specifically the two that are on consent calendar for tonight with Forge Fiber and Ripple Fiber. And finally, Karen will provide a status update on the Team/Intrepid citywide fiber deployment. Non-exclusive right-of-way use agreements are the legal document that allows private fiber providers to install and operate in our city public right-of-way. They are not exclusive in the sense that different providers can install and operate simultaneously in the same area. And depending on the terms of the agreement, they may include some initial deployment locations. But in any case, new locations are not pre-approved with those agreements, and they require specific site permits that are reviewed and authorized and amended later. And all providers must obtain all required construction permits and traffic control permits before any construction is done to adhere to city standards. So the first one is Forge Fiber. Forge Fiber is a fiber provider that recently acquired most of Lumen's existing facilities in Thornton. So this new right-of-way use agreement, basically what it does is it serves to establish the new provider name. The agreement does not include any new locations, and if Force Fiber wants to expand, they would have to apply for the 5 specific permits that I mentioned before. And just to give an idea, their anticipated expansion is about 10% in the short term. And the second one is Ripple Fiber. Ripple Fiber, it is a new provider that wants to do a citywide rollout in Thornton. The city staff will collaborate with Ripple Fiber to develop deployment pace and schedule that would align with city resources as well as our community needs. And again, the agreement does not approve any locations. It just establishes the legal terms and obligations for the provider. And future locations will also require site-specific permits. And with that, I'll.
Good evening, Grant Bloom, Infrastructure Engineering Manager. So I oversee construction inspection, right-of-way permitting, and utility location, which is kind of the nexus for fiber installation. I'm specifically talking about Intrepid Fiber because they are the provider that the city essentially initiated. Ting had an agreement with them, or the city entered into an agreement with Ting to provide fiber citywide. They are the only non-franchise that is required to provide citywide fiber. All others, it's just a business decision of where they want to go. So Intrepid started in earnest in July of 2025 when the agreement was assigned to them. So they're the fiber owner. Still Ting is the internet service provider. And then as you can see from the graph on the left, they ramped up very quickly last year, through the middle of last year, worked very hard over our warm and dry winter. And the as of today number is they're over 1 million linear feet of conduit in the ground, which I recognize is a somewhat vague measure of progress, but it is going very rapidly. That corresponds to 11,678 addresses served. So those addresses could call up Ting and start service today. On the resident interaction side, Congruix, their contractor that is building the network for Intrepid, has a website and a dedicated hotline, and they also get resident requests referred to them from My Thornton that come to city staff that are appropriate for their handling. So they've had 278 interactions to date, 169 of those originating from My Thornton. Pending any questions, that's all I have on this update.
Any questions? Devin?
So Ting came through, like, I know that they came through Ward 3 recently, putting a lot of stuff in that wasn't in by Lumen. They were running through the area in like November-ish, but still to this date, like as far as I know, most of the people around our area still don't have anything. Did they have an actual plan rollout for those houses? Because they get 11,000 houses total, but like just specifically in my neighborhood, it's almost 1,000, and none of those have been turned on yet. So they didn't know when their headache, and some of the residents were some of the ones that called going, why is there somebody digging up my flowers? To be like, well, if I'm gonna lose all this, when am I gonna benefit from it?
Sure. So the general rule that I was given is that about 3 months from when they show up is when service should be available. Ting did deliberately kind of slow roll their marketing for getting service, making sure as they were figuring out the relationship with Intrepid and just essentially trying to avoid that situation that you described where they put out information, sign up for a fiber, and then you can't actually do it because it's not live yet. So 3 months is the general rule that I have been told.
Has anybody reached out to Intrepid as well with regarding the notification process? I know that's been one of the biggest complaints is that people were like, these people never told me what was going on. Now there's a giant box in my yard.
I say yes, absolutely. So they're required to notify residents no later than 48 hours before construction activity starts. They have actually granted myself and my construction supervisor access to their notification system. So they have a map that shows everywhere that they've put a door hanger, and they'll have a time-stamped photo of that door hanger on each address. So we can validate if a resident says, I was never told anything, whether they were or not, and whether Intrepid was compliant with their permit. One thing that we have noticed is that the flyers precede the construction enough that they got it, they tossed it out with various junk mail things, and then when the construction actually happens, they don't connect those two things to realize, oh, I actually have the contact information. So we get a lot of inquiries. I mean, as the themes pointed out, the number one inquiry that we get is what's going on?
Yeah.
What's happening here?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it is something that we speak weekly with all of the fiber providers that are active in Thornton. And we've been hammering regularly the notification piece.
Well, I'm glad to hear that there's like actual photo evidence, proof of it, because I mean, things happen. My wife would take it off the door and throw it away and I wouldn't know and I'd call. So it makes sense to do it that way. So thanks.
Any other questions? John?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. So, since I've been, elected to council, I've heard a couple of complaints from neighbors about, well, I didn't opt in for this. It's intruding on my property. So obviously they're not, are we actually talking to residents in advance before the contractor comes in?
So the city does not just go out to neighborhoods and canvas ahead of time. Some measures that we have done is, there was an article in the latest City Voice just describing fiber and the process and the rights to easements and right of way and that kind of a thing. And some social media that will follow that as well. But no, it is incumbent, it's in the permit requirements for the contractors that they need to be notifying. And sometimes it is vague, sometimes it's just kind of like you're gonna have great internet sometime soon, without, skipping the detail of it's gonna be a lot of construction and mess in the interim.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Do we have time for the exec session?
I think we could move it pretty quickly if it got going. Yeah.
All right, we will
Give it
try.
a shot if council would like to, yes.
All right, I'll go ahead and call to order a special meeting. Can I please get a roll call? Here.
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 Mayor Pro Tem Ayala?
Here.
Councilmember Byrd?
Here.
Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Councilmember Morris? Councilmember Morris?
You can be present for the vote. You just can't be present for the actual.
Oh, got it. I'm here. Thanks.
Thanks.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar? Here. Morris present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Before I get a motion, can we get a purpose of the executive session?
Yes, we would like to share with City Council some information about a particular taxpayer's account and let council know our legal options relevant to this account. Both the taxpayer account information is confidential and any legal advice received will be confidential relevant to this issue.
Any questions? Can I get the motion?
Yes, a motion would be to go into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-64024B and C to discuss a particular taxpayer's account information which is confidential pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 3921-113-4A and Thornton City Code 26-3922, and to receive legal advice related to the sales and use tax license, distraint, seizure, and sale of taxpayer property as provided in the Thornton Municipal Code.
Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll move.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, please say no. All right, we'll give us a moment to switch the recording, and Drew, we will see you in chambers in about 12 minutes. Ish.